What if the very thing keeping you from true peace isn't the chaos of the world but your own ego? Edgar Cayce, the man they once called the sleeping prophet, gave a warning that still echoes today. Humanity's greatest danger is not war, disease, or poverty, but the battle between the small self we call ego and the vast reality he described as Christ consciousness. During the dark years of the Great Depression, when families arrived in Virginia Beach with nothing but despair, Cayce entered trance and spoke words that pierced deeper than any material advice. He explained that the ego, left unchecked, would blind humanity, turning people inward to selfish desires, while Christ consciousness was the force that could free the soul and bring true unity with God. This wasn't just a religious statement, it was a psychological and spiritual diagnosis of the deepest human condition. So, let me ask you right now, in your own life, do you feel guided more by ego or by something higher, something that whispers peace even in chaos? Write your answer in the comments below before we go deeper. One of Cayce's most moving sessions took place in 1932 when a mother sat trembling in front of him, her son on the edge of losing himself to anger and destructive choices. While in trance, Cayce did not just address the boy's condition, he spoke to the root cause, warning that ego-driven living would consume him unless he opened his heart to Christ consciousness. His words were not meant to shame, but to awaken. He described the ego as a shadow that thrives on separation, fear, and control, while Christ consciousness was the eternal light that brought compassion, healing, and freedom from the illusions of the world. The family left transformed, realizing that their challenge was not merely external circumstances, but the inner war between selfish will and divine will. What Cayce revealed during those years was profound. Every person is constantly standing at a crossroads. On one side, the ego whispers survival, pride, and the need to be right. On the other side, Christ consciousness calls us to service, humility, and unity with the divine. Cayce explained that humanity's suffering often comes when people identify only with the ego, forgetting their eternal nature. He once said, "The purpose of life is to become one with the Christ within." This wasn't a call to abandon individuality, but to transform it, to align personal will with divine intention. And here is what shocked many. He emphasized that this battle was not abstract or distant. It happened in daily choices, in the way a person forgave, spoke, and treated others. During the war years, Cayce continued to speak of this same theme. As bombs fell across the globe and soldiers wrote desperate letters home, people came to him seeking predictions, hoping for relief from fear. But instead of political timelines, he reminded them of something more enduring. Unless humanity learned to live by Christ consciousness rather than ego, wars would repeat, no matter the treaties signed. He warned that technological progress without spiritual grounding would only amplify destruction. It was a radical warning, one that feels even more relevant today in an age of digital power and global unrest. He was telling humanity that the real battleground is within the heart. Cayce's words were not vague philosophy. They carried the weight of lived experience for those who heard them. Imagine sitting in a quiet room in Virginia Beach, hearing his voice soften as he described the ego as a force that feeds illusions of separation. Me versus you. My gain over your loss. Then, in contrast, he spoke of Christ consciousness as the state where the soul remembers it is one with the Creator, where compassion naturally flows and the need to dominate disappears. People wept as they listened, because these were not distant ideas. They could see this battle within themselves. A father confessed that his pride had broken his marriage. A businessman admitted his greed had blinded him to his workers' suffering, and a young woman realized her fear of judgment had kept her from living her truth. Cayce's readings revealed that ego builds walls, while Christ consciousness tears them down to reveal unity. But here is the part that nobody expected. Cayce insisted that ego is not the enemy to be destroyed. Instead, it is a tool that must be trained. He explained that ego allows us to function in the world, to make decisions, to express individuality, but without alignment to the higher self, it becomes destructive. Think of it like a horse, strong, full of energy, but wild if left untamed. Christ consciousness is the rider that brings purpose and direction. Without it, the horse runs aimlessly, causing harm. With it, the same energy becomes power guided by wisdom. This analogy struck a deep chord with many, because it showed that the path was not about rejecting the self, but transforming it into a vessel of service. In one of his most cited readings from the early 1940s, when families were burdened with fear of losing loved ones overseas, Cayce gave a message that carried both hope and warning. He said that the destiny of nations would not be decided merely on battlefields, but in whether people lived out of ego or Christ consciousness in their daily lives. He described how every act of kindness, every prayer said with sincerity, every choice made in love rather than fear, tipped the balance of the entire world. This teaching was revolutionary because it placed responsibility not only on leaders and governments, but on each individual soul. In other words, the way you treat your neighbor carries weight far beyond your street. It echoes in the fabric of humanity. And yet, many struggled with this message because living from Christ consciousness is not easy. It requires surrendering the ego's constant need for validation and control. Cayce often emphasized prayer and meditation as daily practices to realign with the higher self. He told seekers that in stillness, they could access what he called the records of the soul, the memory of their eternal identity with God. These were not mystical luxuries for a few chosen people. They were practical steps for anyone willing to quiet the mind and open the heart. He warned that the ego would fight back with doubt, impatience, and fear, but persistence would reveal that the soul is never alone. During the post-war years, as people tried to rebuild their lives and make sense of the devastation, Cayce's emphasis on Christ consciousness took on even greater urgency. He reminded audiences that wars were not just the result of political ambitions, but reflections of the ego's grip on human hearts. Division, greed, and hatred were all symptoms of humanity forgetting its divine origin. He explained that Christ consciousness was not limited to one religion or denomination. It was the universal truth of love, compassion, and unity that exists within every soul. In one powerful session, he said that recognizing the Christ within was the only way humanity would avoid repeating cycles of destruction. This message struck deeply, especially for those who had seen how pride and selfishness had escalated into global catastrophe. It wasn't about doctrine, it was about survival of the human spirit. Cayce also spoke about the subtle ways ego hides in everyday life. A man might believe he is serving his community, but if his actions are fueled by the need for recognition, the ego is still in control. A mother might sacrifice endlessly for her children, yet if resentment grows quietly within her, ego still holds power. He warned that ego often disguises itself as virtue, making it even more dangerous. Christ consciousness, in contrast, expresses itself without expectation of reward. It gives because giving is the natural expression of the soul. This distinction between false selflessness and genuine love became one of Cayce's most transformative lessons. It forced listeners to examine not just their actions, but the motives behind them. One unforgettable account came from Hopkinsville, Kentucky, where a family arrived at one of Cayce's sessions broken by grief. They had lost their eldest son in the war and could not find peace. Cayce in trance explained gently that the ego clings to loss, demanding answers, demanding control over life and death. But Christ consciousness embraces trust in the eternal journey of the soul, allowing grief to soften into faith. He did not dismiss their pain, he validated it. But he showed them that healing would come not through clinging, but through surrendering to the awareness that their son still lived in spirit, united with God. The family left not with all the answers, but with a sense of peace that no amount of ego-driven reasoning could have provided. Perhaps the most unsettling part of Cayce's warning was how he described the future of humanity. He foresaw that if people continued to live from ego, exploiting resources, dividing nations, feeding hatred, the world would face greater turmoil. But he also promised that if individuals learned to live by Christ consciousness, humanity would step into a new era of spiritual awakening. He often pointed to the example of Jesus, not just as a figure to be worshipped, but as the living demonstration of what it means to surrender ego to divine will. Cayce reminded people that Jesus himself faced the temptation of ego, yet overcame it by aligning fully with God. His message was clear. The same power that guided Christ lives within each of us, waiting to be awakened. Cayce often returned to the practical question everyone asked: how do we actually live from Christ consciousness in a world dominated by ego? His answer was simple yet profound, through daily choices, prayer, and service. He taught that every thought is a seed, and when thoughts are rooted in love, they shape reality in harmony with divine law. But when thoughts are poisoned by fear, pride, or selfishness, they grow into suffering. This teaching challenged people to take responsibility for the unseen world within their own minds. He explained that ego-driven thoughts might feel powerful in the moment, but they always lead to emptiness. In contrast, even the smallest act of Christ-centered thought, a prayer for someone in pain, a moment of forgiveness, a choice to speak with kindness, radiates outward, changing the unseen fabric of life. For Cayce, Christ consciousness was not an ideal. It was a daily practice that could reshape destiny. In one remarkable case shared in Virginia Beach during the 1930s, a man battling alcoholism came seeking help. Doctors had told him his condition was hopeless, his family was ready to abandon him, and his ego screamed that he was beyond redemption. But in trance, Cayce spoke words that pierced through despair. He told the man that within him was the Christ force, a presence stronger than any addiction, waiting to be recognized. He urged him to begin each morning with prayer, affirming not his weakness, but his oneness with God. Months later, witnesses testified that the man had not only found sobriety, but had become a source of strength for others struggling in the same darkness. This transformation was not about willpower. It was about surrendering ego to something greater. Stories like this spread quickly, fueling belief that Cayce's message held the key to real, lasting change. Yet Cayce did not hide the difficulty of this path. He warned that ego would resist fiercely, especially when challenged. He described how doubt, anger, and even despair are the ego's attempts to reclaim control when the soul begins to awaken. He urged seekers not to be discouraged by these struggles, but to see them as signs of progress. In fact, he explained that the very act of recognizing ego's tricks was already a victory of Christ consciousness. He emphasized that no one could walk this journey perfectly. Mistakes and setbacks were part of growth. What mattered most was the continual choice to return to alignment with the higher self. This teaching gave people hope because it freed them from the pressure of perfection. It showed them that even in failure, the soul could rise again. And then came one of Cayce's most haunting warnings, spoken during the early 1940s. He said that if humanity clung to ego, it would bring about not just wars and social collapse, but a deep spiritual blindness. He described this blindness as a state where people would mistake material progress for true advancement, where wealth and power would be worshipped above compassion and unity. Listening today, it feels like he was speaking directly to our modern age, where technology, status, and consumption often overshadow the deeper call of the soul. Yet in the same breath, he reminded listeners that Christ consciousness was always available, always ready to break through even the darkest illusions. He painted a picture of hope, a future where individuals would awaken to their divine nature, and in doing so, transform not just their own lives, but the course of humanity. As the years went on, Cayce's message about the ego versus Christ consciousness became less of a mystical teaching and more of a practical survival guide for humanity. He explained that ego isolates, while Christ consciousness unites. Ego insists on my truth, my possessions, my success, but Christ consciousness reminds us that the soul belongs to God, and that true success is measured not by accumulation, but by how much love we give. He urged people to watch their inner dialogue carefully, because the ego often whispers in subtle ways, through comparison, jealousy, or the desire to control outcomes. He said that every time we choose patience over anger, generosity over greed, or humility over pride, we weaken the grip of ego and strengthen the light of Christ within. For many who came to him, this teaching felt both challenging and liberating, because it showed that transformation was not beyond reach, but within daily choices. One of the most striking examples of this came when a woman visited Cayce, overwhelmed with bitterness after losing her home during the Great Depression. She felt betrayed by life, abandoned by God, and consumed by resentment toward those who had prospered while she lost everything. In trance, Cayce spoke softly but firmly, explaining that her suffering was real, but her deeper pain was being fueled by ego's need to cling to blame. He told her that only by releasing that resentment and embracing the Christ within her heart could she find peace. He did not promise that her possessions would return, but he assured her that her soul could be restored. Witnesses said she left with tears streaming down her face, but her countenance had changed, lighter, freer, touched by the realization that love was more enduring than loss. This is what Cayce wanted humanity to understand. Christ consciousness was not a lofty theological term, but the very key to healing the human condition. He said that as long as we identify only with ego, we live in bondage to fear, anger, and separation. But the moment we awaken to Christ within, we remember our eternal nature and experience true freedom. He warned that society would continue to face crises, economic collapses, wars, even natural upheavals. But the real crisis was always the same, whether humanity would choose ego or Christ consciousness as its guiding force. This choice, he insisted, was not made in speeches or declarations, but in the quiet actions of the soul. Cayce's legacy continues to challenge us today. Look at the divisions in our modern world. Political battles, social tensions, endless struggles for dominance. Doesn't it mirror the very blindness he warned about? And yet his words still point to a way forward, to rise above ego, to awaken the Christ force within, and to live as souls united rather than egos divided. He left us with a promise that if even a small group of people truly lived this way, they could shift the direction of humanity. The question he left hanging in the air still remains for us. Will we choose the fleeting comfort of ego or the eternal strength of Christ consciousness? In the final years of his life, Cayce repeated this warning with even greater urgency. He told seekers that the world was entering a time when ego would disguise itself as progress more than ever before. He foresaw a future where material comfort, technological breakthroughs, and personal ambition would appear to be the highest achievements, yet behind the glitter would lie a deep emptiness. He cautioned that unless individuals learned to see through the ego's illusions, they would lose touch with the eternal truth of the soul. But he never left people without hope. He reminded them that Christ consciousness is not far away, not reserved for saints or prophets, but is as close as a single prayer, a single act of love, a single choice to forgive. He explained that every time we silence the ego and listen to the quiet voice of the heart, we align with the divine plan. One of the last powerful gatherings in Virginia Beach left an unforgettable impression on those present. Cayce, weak in body but strong in spirit, told the group that humanity was on the threshold of a new age. He said that in this coming age, the greatest question would not be about science, politics, or even survival, but about whether individuals would choose to live by the ego or awaken to Christ consciousness. He told them that the destiny of the planet would depend not on external powers, but on the inner transformation of ordinary souls. People sat in silence, some weeping, as they realized that this was not a prediction to be debated, but a responsibility to be carried. His words carried the weight of eternity, urging each person to look within. Today, as we reflect on Cayce's message, it becomes clear that his warning was not just for his time, but for ours. The struggles of ego, division, greed, fear are still with us, but so is the opportunity to awaken. The same Christ force that healed, comforted, and guided people in those sessions is still available to us right now. The question is no longer what Cayce believed, but what we will do with what he revealed. Will we let ego drive us into deeper conflict? Or will we awaken to the higher reality of love, compassion, and unity with God? The choice rests with each soul, every day, in every action. So let me ask you one final time. In the moments when life tests you, when anger rises, when fear whispers, when pride demands control, will you choose to listen to the ego, or will you remember the Christ within you? Leave your answer in the comments, because your reflection may inspire someone else to take that same step. And if this message touched your heart, share it, subscribe, and join this growing community of seekers who believe that Cayce's wisdom is not just history, it is the path forward for all of us. Together, let us awaken to Christ consciousness and prove his words true, that love, not ego, is the destiny of the soul. What if everything you've been told about aging is incomplete? What if the real secret to staying young isn't found in expensive creams, complicated diets, or the latest medical breakthrough, but in something far more profound that Edgar Cayce revealed during his trance readings nearly a century ago? The truth is, Cayce's approach to vitality and youthfulness was so radically different from conventional thinking that even today most people have never heard about it. And what he discovered might completely transform how you think about the aging process. If you're ready to explore wisdom that challenges everything you thought you knew about staying young, hit that like button and subscribe right now so you never miss these profound teachings. Drop a comment sharing what staying young means to you, and I'll mark every single one with a heart, because your journey toward vitality matters. Now let's dive into what Edgar Cayce really taught about the forgotten key to youthfulness. Edgar Cayce gave over 14,000 documented readings during his lifetime, and woven throughout these sessions was a consistent message about human vitality that contradicted the medical understanding of his era. While doctors focused exclusively on the physical body, Cayce insisted that true youthfulness required harmony between three inseparable aspects of our being: the physical, the mental, and the spiritual. He called this the holistic approach, though that term wouldn't become popular until decades after his death. In his readings on health and rejuvenation, Cayce made a startling claim that puzzled many people at the time. He said that the body renews itself completely at the cellular level, and that the primary factor determining whether we age gracefully or deteriorate rapidly isn't genetics or luck. It's something far more within our control. According to Cayce, the quality of our thoughts, the state of our emotions, and our spiritual alignment directly influence how our cells regenerate. Think about that for a moment. Cayce was telling people in the 1920s, 30s, and 40s that their mental and spiritual states were actually controlling their physical aging process. This was revolutionary. Medicine at that time treated the body like a machine that simply wore out over time. But Cayce saw something entirely different. He saw the human body as a living temple constantly rebuilding itself, and the blueprints for that rebuilding came from our consciousness itself. So what was the forgotten key? What did Cayce identify as the master principle for staying young? The answer centers on one word that appears repeatedly throughout his readings on vitality: circulation. But Cayce wasn't just talking about blood circulation, though he emphasized that too. He was talking about the circulation of life force itself through every level of our being. Cayce taught that life force, what he sometimes called the creative energy or the divine spark, must flow freely through our physical, mental, and spiritual bodies. When that flow becomes blocked or stagnant at any level, aging accelerates. When it circulates freely, the body maintains its natural vitality regardless of chronological age. This circulation principle became the foundation of everything else he taught about youthfulness. On the physical level, Cayce gave specific guidance that was remarkably ahead of his time. He emphasized the importance of spinal health, explaining that the spine is the central pathway through which life force flows into the body's various systems. He frequently recommended osteopathic adjustments and spinal manipulations to keep this pathway clear. The nervous system, according to Cayce, acts as the bridge between spiritual energy and physical manifestation. He also stressed the critical importance of eliminations. Cayce explained that toxins and waste materials that aren't properly eliminated from the body create a burden that accelerates the aging process. He often recommended colonics, hydrotherapy, and dietary approaches that supported the body's natural detoxification systems. In reading after reading, he emphasized that internal cleanliness was essential for maintaining youthfulness. The diet recommendations Cayce gave focused on alkalinity and freshness. He consistently advised people to eat more vegetables than any other food group, particularly leafy greens. He warned against too many fried foods, too much red meat, and excessive starches and sugars. He emphasized eating foods that were as close to their natural state as possible. But here's what made Cayce's dietary guidance unique. He didn't present it as a rigid system. He explained that the attitude with which you eat matters almost as much as what you eat. This brings us to the mental aspect of Cayce's youth formula, and this is where his teachings become truly distinctive. Cayce insisted that our mental patterns and emotional states create the environment in which our cells either thrive or deteriorate. He taught that chronic worry, persistent fear, ongoing resentment, and harbored anger literally poison the body's systems and accelerate aging. In numerous readings, Cayce explained that negative mental states disrupt the glandular system, particularly the endocrine glands that regulate everything from metabolism to cellular regeneration. When someone lives in a constant state of stress, anxiety, or bitterness, their endocrine system becomes imbalanced, and this imbalance manifests as premature aging. The body simply cannot maintain youthfulness when the mind is trapped in destructive patterns. But Cayce didn't just identify the problem. He provided the solution, and it was deceptively simple: changing our mental habits through deliberate spiritual practice. He emphasized the power of constructive thinking, encouraging people to consciously redirect their thoughts away from negativity and toward ideals that uplifted and inspired them. One practice Cayce recommended repeatedly was the discipline of setting a spiritual ideal. He taught that each person should identify their highest spiritual purpose or value, then align their thoughts and actions with that ideal daily. This practice, he explained, creates coherence between the spiritual, mental, and physical aspects of our being, and that coherence is what allows life force to circulate freely. Meditation was another cornerstone of Cayce's approach to maintaining vitality. He didn't describe meditation as merely a relaxation technique or stress management tool. According to Cayce, meditation is the practice of attuning ourselves to the divine source of all life. During meditation, we open pathways for spiritual energy to flow into our physical bodies, literally recharging our cellular batteries with life force. Cayce gave specific guidance on meditation practice throughout his readings. He emphasized the importance of spinal alignment during meditation, explaining that the spine serves as the antenna through which we receive spiritual energy. He talked about the awakening of spiritual centers within the body, which correspond to the endocrine glands. When these centers are awakened and balanced through meditation, the entire body experiences rejuvenation. But here's where Cayce's teaching reaches its deepest level. He explained that the ultimate key to staying young isn't found in any technique or practice alone. The real secret lies in understanding our true nature as spiritual beings. According to Cayce, we age because we forget who we really are. We identify with the physical body and believe we are limited, mortal, and subject to decay. But Cayce insisted this is an illusion. In his readings on the nature of consciousness and existence, Cayce taught that we are eternal spiritual beings temporarily inhabiting physical bodies. The soul itself never ages. It is the source of perpetual life and vitality. When we reconnect with our spiritual essence through daily practice, prayer, and meditation, we tap into a wellspring of renewable energy that can keep the physical body vibrant far longer than most people imagine possible. Cayce also emphasized the transformative power of service to others. He taught that when we dedicate our lives to being a channel of healing, love, and assistance for others, we keep the life force circulating through us. Selfishness and self-centeredness, according to Cayce, cause stagnation, while selfless service keeps us youthful and vibrant. This wasn't just spiritual philosophy. Cayce believed it had direct physical effects on our vitality. One of the most profound principles Cayce shared about youthfulness was the importance of purpose. He explained that people who maintain a clear sense of purpose and meaning in their lives tend to stay younger longer. When someone has a reason to get up each morning, a contribution to make, a mission to fulfill, their body responds by maintaining its vitality. Conversely, when people retire from meaningful activity and lose their sense of purpose, aging often accelerates dramatically. The concept of attitudes was central to Cayce's understanding of aging. He frequently told people that their attitudes toward life, toward others, and toward themselves were more important than almost any other factor in determining how they aged. An attitude of gratitude, joy, and optimism creates a body chemistry that supports youthfulness. An attitude of complaint, cynicism, and negativity creates a body chemistry that promotes deterioration. Cayce also addressed the role of the will in maintaining vitality. He taught that we have far more control over our aging process than we typically believe. Through the consistent application of our will, aligned with spiritual ideals, we can direct the body's regenerative processes. This wasn't wishful thinking or positive affirmations alone. Cayce was describing a genuine power of consciousness to influence physical reality. In his readings on longevity and vitality, Cayce made it clear that staying young isn't about fighting against a natural process. It's about aligning with the natural flow of life force that wants to sustain and renew us. The body is designed to regenerate. Every cell contains intelligence and healing power, but we block that natural regeneration through our mental patterns, emotional habits, and spiritual disconnection. The practical application of Cayce's teachings on youthfulness comes down to daily choices and consistent practices, starting each day with prayer or meditation to attune to the divine source, maintaining spinal health through movement, stretching, or therapeutic work, eating foods that support alkalinity and vitality, monitoring our thoughts and redirecting them toward constructive patterns, practicing forgiveness to release the emotional toxins that age us prematurely, engaging in meaningful service that keeps life force flowing through us. But perhaps the most important element of Cayce's approach was his insistence on patience and persistence. He frequently reminded people that transformation doesn't happen overnight. The body took years to reach its current state, and it requires consistent effort over time to restore optimal vitality. Yet he also emphasized that it's never too late to begin. The body's regenerative capacity is remarkable, and when we start providing it with the right conditions, physically, mentally, and spiritually, it responds with renewed vigor. Cayce's vision of youthfulness wasn't about looking like a teenager when you're 70. It was about maintaining the vitality, flexibility, and joy of someone who is fully alive at any age. He taught that chronological age and biological age are not the same thing, and that through conscious application of spiritual principles, we can slow and even reverse many aspects of the aging process. What makes Cayce's approach so powerful is that it addresses aging at its root cause, rather than just treating symptoms. Modern approaches focus on external interventions like surgery, medications, and cosmetic procedures. Cayce taught that real youthfulness radiates from within, from the quality of our consciousness and the flow of spiritual energy through our being. The forgotten key to staying young that Edgar Cayce revealed isn't a secret technique or hidden knowledge. It's the recognition that we are spiritual beings with the power to influence our physical reality through consciousness. It's the understanding that body, mind, and spirit are one integrated system, and that vitality depends on harmony among all three. It's the practice of daily attunement to the divine source of life that renews us from the inside out. As you reflect on these teachings, consider this. What would your life look like if you fully embraced Cayce's holistic approach to youthfulness? What if you committed to daily meditation, conscious eating, constructive thinking, and purposeful service? What if you truly believed that your body is designed to regenerate and that you have the power to support that regeneration through your choices? The wisdom Edgar Cayce shared during his readings came from a source beyond his conscious mind. He called it the universal consciousness, the Akashic records, the divine intelligence that knows all things. And according to that source, staying young isn't about defying nature. It's about aligning with the deepest truth of our nature as eternal spiritual beings, temporarily expressing through physical form. This perspective transforms everything. Aging is no longer an enemy to fight or a fate to accept. It becomes a feedback mechanism showing us where we're out of alignment with our spiritual essence. Every sign of premature aging, every loss of vitality, becomes an invitation to look deeper, to reconnect with Source, to restore the natural circulation of life force that wants to keep us vibrant and alive. If these teachings resonate with your soul, if you feel called to explore this path of holistic vitality, I invite you to take action right now. Hit that like button to let me know this wisdom touched you. Subscribe to this channel so you can continue discovering Edgar Cayce's profound insights on health, consciousness, and spiritual growth. Drop a comment below sharing your own experiences with vitality and aging, or tell me which aspect of Cayce's teaching you want to apply first in your own life. I promise to mark every comment with a heart, because your journey matters, and together we're rediscovering wisdom that can transform how we age. The forgotten key to staying young that Edgar Cayce revealed is available to every person right now. It doesn't require expensive treatments or special access. It requires commitment to a daily practice of spiritual attunement, mental discipline, and physical care. It requires seeing yourself not as a body that's slowly dying, but as a spiritual being expressing life through your physical form. It requires trusting that the same intelligence that created your body knows exactly how to renew it when you provide the right conditions. Edgar Cayce's legacy lives on through the Association for Research and Enlightenment in Virginia Beach, where his readings are preserved and studied. Thousands of people have applied his principles and experienced remarkable transformations in their vitality and well-being. His teachings continue to inspire new generations to look beyond conventional approaches and explore the deeper dimensions of health and consciousness. The question now is, what will you do with this knowledge? Will you dismiss it as too simple or too strange, or will you be bold enough to test these principles in your own life and discover whether they hold the power Cayce claimed they did? There's something else Cayce revealed about youthfulness that deserves deeper exploration, something that connects directly to how we experience time itself. In several of his readings, Cayce explained that our perception of aging is intimately linked to our relationship with the present moment. He taught that people who live predominantly in regret about the past or anxiety about the future literally accelerate their aging process. The body responds to these mental time travels as if they were actual stressful events happening right now. According to Cayce, one of the most powerful practices for maintaining youthfulness is learning to be fully present in each moment. When we bring our complete attention to the now, we stop the drain of vital energy that occurs when our consciousness is fragmented across time. He explained that the eternal now is where the divine source meets us, and it's in this present moment that we access the regenerative power of spirit. This teaching about presence connects beautifully with what Cayce said about joy and laughter. He frequently emphasized that joy is not just an emotion, but a healing frequency that revitalizes the entire body. In his readings, he often recommended that people cultivate more laughter, play, and lightheartedness in their daily lives. He wasn't suggesting we ignore life's challenges or pretend everything is perfect. Rather, he was pointing to a deeper joy that comes from knowing our true spiritual nature, a joy that remains accessible even during difficult times. Cayce also spoke extensively about the role of creativity in maintaining vitality. He taught that every human being is inherently creative because we're made in the image of the Creator. When we engage in creative expression, whether through art, music, writing, gardening, cooking, or any form that allows our inner spirit to manifest outwardly, we activate regenerative forces within our being. Creativity keeps the life force moving, prevents stagnation, and maintains that youthful spark of enthusiasm for living. The breath was another element Cayce identified as crucial for youthfulness, though this aspect of his teaching is often overlooked. He explained that proper breathing, particularly deep breathing that fully engages the diaphragm, helps oxygenate the blood and stimulate the flow of life force through the body. In some readings, he recommended specific breathing exercises to be practiced during meditation or throughout the day, as a way of consciously directing energy and maintaining vitality. Cayce's understanding of the relationship between youthfulness and relationships is particularly insightful. He taught that the quality of our connections with others directly impacts our vitality. Relationships built on genuine love, mutual respect, and authentic communication nourish us at the deepest levels. Conversely, toxic relationships drain our life force and contribute to premature aging. He encouraged people to evaluate their relationships honestly and to have the courage to transform or release connections that consistently depleted their energy. One aspect of Cayce's teaching that often surprises people is his emphasis on music and vibration. He explained that everything in creation vibrates at specific frequencies, including our bodies. Music, particularly harmonious and uplifting music, can help attune our cellular vibration to higher frequencies that support regeneration and youthfulness. He sometimes recommended specific pieces of music or types of sound to support healing and vitality. The power of expectation was another key principle in Cayce's approach to staying young. He taught that what we expect tends to manifest in our experience. If we expect to deteriorate with age, if we believe aging inevitably means decline and disease, we unconsciously program our bodies to fulfill those expectations. But if we hold the expectation that we can remain vital, flexible, and healthy throughout our years, we create an entirely different possibility. This isn't naive positive thinking. It's a recognition of consciousness's creative power. Cayce also addressed the importance of what he called attunement to natural rhythms. He taught that human beings are designed to live in harmony with natural cycles, the cycle of day and night, the changing seasons, the rhythms of rest and activity. Modern life often disconnects us from these natural patterns, and that disconnection takes a toll on our vitality. Spending time in nature, respecting our need for rest, and honoring the seasons of our own life all contribute to maintaining youthfulness. Perhaps one of the most profound elements of Cayce's teaching on staying young relates to his understanding of karma and soul growth. He explained that we're here on earth to learn specific lessons and to grow spiritually. When we resist those lessons, when we fight against the growth opportunities that life presents, we create inner tension that manifests as aging and disease. But when we embrace our life lessons with grace and willingness to grow, we align with the soul's purpose, and that alignment brings vitality. The practice of gratitude emerged repeatedly in Cayce's readings as a powerful key to youthfulness. He taught that gratitude isn't just good manners or positive thinking. It's a fundamental spiritual practice that shifts our entire energetic state. When we cultivate genuine gratitude for our life, our body, our experiences, and even our challenges, we create an inner environment where healing and regeneration flourish naturally. Cayce's vision of staying young ultimately points us toward a complete transformation in how we understand ourselves and our relationship with the aging process. He invites us to see that we're not victims of time, genetics, or circumstance. We're co-creators of our experience, endowed with remarkable power to influence our physical reality through our consciousness. The body we inhabit is not a machine that inevitably breaks down. It's a living temple, constantly responsive to the quality of our thoughts, emotions, and spiritual alignment. The forgotten key to staying young is now in your hands. It's a key that opens not just to physical vitality, but to a completely new way of being in the world, a way that recognizes your divine nature, honors the wisdom of your body, and celebrates the eternal spirit that animates your form. The choice of what to do with this key and the life it can unlock is yours alone. Have you ever felt that certain messages reach you only when your soul is ready to hear them? Edgar Cayce, known as the Sleeping Prophet, often said that nothing in life is coincidence, and that the very moment you come across a truth is part of a greater plan for your spiritual growth. If you found this video today, it is not by accident. There is something in these words that belongs to you, something that Cayce's readings revealed long ago about the connection between the soul and divine timing. He taught that the soul attracts the knowledge it needs exactly at the moment it is prepared to act on it, and that ignoring such signs can mean missing an opportunity for transformation. What if this is one of those moments? What if the fact that you pressed play is itself a calling? Stay with me until the end, because what you are about to hear could challenge your faith, strengthen your hope, and awaken something deep within you. And before we go further, I want to know from you, do you believe that certain messages appear in your life only when God decides you are ready? Leave your answer in the comments, because your voice matters, and I will read every single one. From the beginning of his life's mission, Edgar Cayce explained that the soul is never abandoned, never left without guidance, and that every person has a moment when divine truth reaches them in the exact way they need. He believed that our lives are woven by threads of cause and effect, what he called the law of karma, but also by the grace of God that allows us to receive light at the moment of deepest need. To Cayce, the soul is on an eternal journey, moving through experiences, lifetimes, and lessons until it awakens fully to its oneness with the Creator. And yet, this awakening is never forced. It comes when the heart is open, when the mind is ready, and when faith has been tested enough to embrace truth. That is why Cayce's words remain so powerful. They are not only information from another time, they are seeds that sprout exactly when your spirit is prepared to nurture them. When Cayce spoke of divine timing, he reminded people that even suffering has its place. Illness, heartbreak, disappointment, even failure were described by him as tools the soul uses to turn back toward God. According to his readings, these experiences are not punishments but opportunities to see beyond the material world and remember our true origin. Imagine the weight of that statement. What you thought was the worst season of your life may actually be the exact path that opens your eyes to eternal life. And what may appear as chance encounters, a phrase in a book, or even stumbling upon a video like this, may be the Creator's way of saying, "Now you are ready, now listen." This understanding brings both responsibility and hope. Responsibility, because it means we are accountable for our choices, our thoughts, and the vibrations we carry. Cayce warned repeatedly that thoughts are things, that what we hold in our minds becomes reality in our lives, and that negativity poisons not only the body, but the soul. Hope. Because if thoughts shape reality, then every prayer, every word of forgiveness, every choice for love over hate has the power to create a new future. In this, Cayce aligned with the teachings of Jesus, who urged us to love our neighbor, to forgive endlessly, and to keep our eyes fixed on the kingdom of God within. Cayce's readings described heaven and hell not as distant places, but as states of consciousness. Heaven is the soul aligned with God, vibrating with harmony, compassion, and truth. Hell is separation, the heavy state of choosing fear, envy, or anger instead of love. These states are not delayed until after death. They begin now, in the choices we make daily. That is why every moment carries eternal weight. To change your state of mind is to change the path of your soul. To cling to bitterness is to taste hell even while alive, but to cultivate prayer, forgiveness, and service is to open the gates of heaven right here, right now. Cayce's words were simple yet radical. No one is locked out of heaven except by their own refusal to open the door. As you listen, ask yourself, what state are you living in today? When you wake up in the morning, do you feel the lightness of heaven in your spirit or the heaviness of hell? Cayce said that every soul has the power to shift, that prayer can lift the mind in an instant, and that meditation can reconnect us with the Christ within. He urged people to begin not with fear, but with faith, even if that faith is as small as a mustard seed, because every step toward God is answered by a step of God toward you. If you are hearing these words, it is because your soul is seeking. And if you stay until the end, perhaps you will find not only answers, but the very invitation your spirit has been longing for. Before we continue, I want to pause and invite you to take part in this journey with me. If you are finding meaning in these words, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your interaction not only helps this message reach more people who need it, but it also creates a circle of souls united in truth and faith. I will be reading your comments, and your words may inspire someone else who is also searching. Cayce's vision of spiritual growth always pointed back to Christ. He never placed himself as an authority above Scripture or above God. Instead, he insisted that his readings should always be tested against the teachings of Jesus. In his trance states, when asked about healing, guidance, or even the mysteries of the soul, Cayce returned again and again to one central truth, that the highest law is love, and that Christ is the pattern every soul must eventually follow. This was not the love of sentiment or comfort, but the radical love that forgives enemies, that serves the weak, that seeks God in prayer above all else. To live this way, Cayce said, is to align with the eternal purpose of the soul, and to experience heaven both in this life and the next. For many people, Cayce's insistence on Christ as the center of life was surprising. After all, his psychic readings touched on subjects far beyond traditional religion: reincarnation, past lives, the Akashic records, and even prophecies about the future of nations. But in every subject, he circled back to the same foundation: Without Christ, knowledge is incomplete. Without love, wisdom is empty. This is why his words still stir hearts today. They speak across decades and still remind us that faith is not about escaping reality, but transforming it with the presence of God within. Cayce taught that the soul carries memories of many lifetimes, and that often our struggles with certain people, our unexpected fears, or even our talents, are remnants of experiences long past. Yet, he also said that Christ can redeem the past, heal the wounds of yesterday, and break cycles of karma when love replaces bitterness. This teaching offered both accountability and freedom. Yes, we inherit the results of our actions, but through Christ, we are never trapped. We can choose to forgive, to heal, and to create a new destiny. That is why every moment of life is sacred, because at any second we can align with God's will and shift the entire course of our soul's journey. Cayce often reminded seekers that no one should fear the journey of the soul. Death itself, he explained, is not an end, but a transition, a passing from one room into another, guided by the light of God. He described the afterlife not as an unknown void, but as a reality more vivid than anything we know here, where every thought and intention becomes visible. For this reason, he urged us to live with purity of mind, because what we think and feel will shape the world we awaken to after leaving this body. He warned that hatred, envy, and greed cling to the soul and create barriers in the next life, while prayer, service, and forgiveness free the soul to rise higher. Can you imagine the weight of this teaching? That the words you speak and the thoughts you repeat today are the building blocks of the reality you will one day inhabit. This is why Cayce placed such importance on meditation and prayer. Meditation, he said, is not simply relaxation or silence, but communion with the Spirit of God within. It is the act of stilling the restless mind so that the Christ presence can speak. Prayer, in turn, is the lifting of the heart toward God, not always with words, but with sincerity of soul. He urged people to pray not only for themselves, but for others, especially those they struggled with, because in doing so, they could heal wounds across lifetimes. Imagine how different our world would be if instead of cursing those who hurt us, we prayed for their healing. Cayce said such acts shift not only the one who prays, but also the entire web of relationships in the unseen world. In his view, humanity was never meant to walk alone. Cayce spoke often of angels, guides, and companions in spirit who watch over each soul, nudging, inspiring, and sometimes protecting in ways unseen. He explained that when you feel a sudden urge to forgive, a sudden comfort in grief, or a moment of clarity in confusion, you may be experiencing the touch of these unseen helpers. But he also cautioned, they cannot interfere without your invitation. The door must be opened by your willingness, your prayer, your choice to align with God. This teaching echoes Christ's words, "Ask, and it shall be given you. Seek, and ye shall find. Knock, and it shall be opened unto you." Cayce also emphasized that the physical body is a temple, meant to be cared for as an instrument of the soul. He gave countless readings about diet, balance, rest, and natural remedies, always reminding that spiritual and physical health are deeply connected. To mistreat the body through neglect, gluttony, or hatred was, in his words, to dishonor the dwelling place of the spirit. Yet he never demanded perfection. Instead, he taught moderation, patience, and kindness toward oneself, reminding that the body is a gift and a responsibility. For Cayce, every glass of water, every choice of food, every act of rest could become an offering if done in awareness of God's presence. And yet, he knew that people struggled. He saw their doubts, their weaknesses, their fears. In his readings, he did not condemn but encouraged. Again and again, he pointed souls back to Christ, saying that every failure could be redeemed, every sin forgiven, every wound healed. The challenge was never whether God would forgive, but whether the individual would open their heart enough to receive it. Do you see the power in that? It means that right now, no matter what burden you carry, you can step into a new life with God's help. You do not have to wait until tomorrow or another lifetime. The door is open today. That is why Cayce's message remains urgent. We live in a world filled with noise, with distraction, with endless promises of material comfort that leave the soul starving. But the deeper hunger inside of you will never be filled by possessions, by status, or by fleeting pleasures. Cayce insisted that the only true satisfaction comes from communion with God and living in harmony with His laws. And the law above all laws, he said, is love. Not shallow love, not sentimental love, but the love that sacrifices, that serves, that sees the face of God in every person. To love this way is to step into eternity even now. Think about your own life. How often do you chase after things that fade while neglecting the eternal? How many times have you chosen anger over forgiveness, fear over faith, or despair over prayer? Cayce's words call us back, not with condemnation, but with hope. He says to you, no matter how many times you have fallen, the soul within you is divine, made in the image of God and destined for light. The question is whether you will answer the call today. If these words are stirring something inside you, do not ignore it. This is the moment to act. Take a second to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave your reflection in the comments. Tell me, what truth do you feel your soul needed to hear today? Your response may be the spark that helps another soul recognize their own path. Together, we can create a community of seekers who are not afraid to walk closer to God, who remind each other that heaven begins here with every thought, every choice, and every act of love. Cayce's vision of the future was both sobering and hopeful. In many of his readings, he warned of great changes to come, shifts in the earth, upheavals in nations, and challenges that would test humanity's spirit. Yet he never spoke these prophecies to inspire fear. Instead, he explained that such changes are part of the soul's awakening, part of the process that shakes us free from illusions so that we can cling to what is eternal. He said that those who hold to faith, who live by prayer, and who serve with love will not only endure these trials, but will shine as lights in the darkness. In this way, every soul can become a beacon for others, a testimony that God's presence is greater than any storm. Cayce never promised that the path of faith would be easy, but he showed that it would always be worth it. In one of his most striking statements, he declared that every soul must eventually face itself, and that nothing can be hidden in the realms beyond. Our actions, our thoughts, our motives are all revealed before God, not to condemn us, but to awaken us to the truth. Imagine for a moment standing before a mirror that does not reflect your body but your soul. Every resentment, every kindness, every secret prayer, every hidden desire laid bare in perfect clarity. This was how Cayce described the process after death, a review not forced by an angry judge, but illuminated by divine light that invites us to see ourselves as we truly are. For some, this light feels like heaven. For others, it feels like burning. The difference lies only in how closely we have chosen to walk with God in this life. Yet Cayce's words are not meant to inspire fear, but transformation. He taught that the soul is never without hope, no matter how heavy the past may seem. The Christ Spirit, he said, is the bridge between our weakness and God's perfection. Through sincere repentance, through forgiveness, through the decision to live in love, any soul can rise again. Even those who feel trapped in cycles of failure or bound by guilt can be lifted. This is why Cayce spoke so often about grace. Karma may explain the consequences of our actions, but grace breaks the chains and offers new beginnings. Grace is God's love reaching into our darkest places and saying, "Come home." He urged people not to wait for death to awaken. The habits you form, the prayers you speak, the choices you make each day carve pathways for your soul. If you live in anger, you train your soul in anger. If you live in fear, you bind your soul to fear. But if you choose faith, if you choose love, if you choose service, then even the smallest acts shape your soul toward eternity. Cayce explained that no effort is wasted. Every act of kindness, no matter how small, is written in the fabric of the soul. Every moment of prayer draws you closer to the source of life. The soul, he said, is like a garden. What you plant today will become the harvest you reap tomorrow, and even into eternity. Many who came to Cayce asked about their purpose in life. His answer was always the same. Your purpose is to manifest the Spirit of Christ in whatever you do. It is not the profession, the wealth, or the recognition that defines your mission. It is the spirit with which you live. Whether you are a teacher, a mother, a worker, or a leader, your task is to reveal God's love in that role. That is what gives life meaning. That is what echoes into eternity. Do not underestimate the power of a simple prayer whispered in the dark, a word of encouragement given to a stranger, or an act of forgiveness offered when it costs you dearly. These are the treasures stored in heaven, the deeds that follow the soul beyond the grave. Cayce also warned that humanity often forgets the spiritual dimension in the chase for material gain. He said that civilizations rise and fall not because of wealth or power, but because of whether they honor God and live by spiritual law. He spoke of past ages where nations collapsed under the weight of selfishness and corruption, while those who clung to truth endured. His words are a reminder for us today. No empire, no success, no personal ambition will stand without faith, humility, and love as its foundation. To ignore this is to repeat the mistakes of history. To embrace it is to become part of God's eternal kingdom. When you think about your own life, what foundation are you building on? Is it on the shifting sands of ego, pride, and possessions? Or is it on the solid rock of faith, prayer, and service? Cayce made it clear, the storms of life will come. Loss, illness, disappointment, and trials will test every soul, but only those who have built on the foundation of God will endure with peace. This echoes the teaching of Jesus himself. The rain descended, the floods came, the winds blew and beat upon that house, and it fell not, for it was founded upon a rock. Cayce's entire life was spent pointing people back to that rock. If you are still listening, it is because your soul is hungry for truth. Perhaps you have felt the emptiness of chasing what does not last. Perhaps you have sensed that there must be more than what this world offers. This is your moment. This is your invitation. Cayce said that when truth reaches you, it is because your soul has called for it. The fact that you are here is itself a sign. The question now is what you will do with it. Will you dismiss it as coincidence, or will you let it transform you, drawing you closer to the God who has been waiting for you all along? Cayce's life itself was a testimony to the mystery of God's calling. He was an ordinary man, a photographer by trade, with no desire to be famous or to step outside the life he knew. And yet, when he surrendered in prayer and entered his trance states, words came through him that changed thousands of lives. He never claimed these truths as his own, but insisted they were from the higher source, aligned with Christ. His humility was as important as his gift. He warned that any power used for pride or selfishness becomes destructive, while any power surrendered to God becomes light. This lesson is one for all of us. The gifts and talents we carry are not for self-glory, but for service. When surrendered, they can lift the world. When hoarded, they weigh the soul down. Cayce described the soul as eternal, moving through many lifetimes with the purpose of learning one lesson above all: love. Reincarnation, for him, was not a cycle of punishment, but of mercy, giving the soul repeated opportunities to grow, to heal, and to align with God. Yet he also taught that the ultimate goal is not endless return, but reunion with the Creator. Every life is a classroom, every challenge a test, every relationship a mirror. And when the soul finally embodies love completely, it no longer needs to return but rests in God's presence. This teaching awakens us to take seriously every day, every trial, every relationship, because each one is part of our eternal journey. Think of the relationships in your life that bring pain. According to Cayce, those very struggles may be unfinished lessons from before, invitations to forgive, to grow, to release. He urged people not to run from these difficulties, but to meet them with prayer and compassion. He explained that no one enters your life by accident. Parents, children, spouses, friends, even enemies, all may be part of a divine design, soul contracts written long ago to give you the chance to awaken. If you look at your life with this perspective, then every person becomes a teacher, every conflict a chance to rise, and every act of love a step closer to eternity. Cayce also emphasized the power of Scripture, not as a book of rules, but as a living word that speaks to each soul differently depending on their need. He often recommended daily reading of the Bible, not as obligation, but as nourishment. He said that when you approach the Word with prayer, you will find exactly the passage your soul requires that day. How many times have you opened the Scriptures and felt a line leap off the page as if written for you? Cayce believed this was no coincidence, but divine timing. Just as you are hearing these words now, you will find in Scripture the voice of God answering your need in the present moment. It is important to remember that Cayce never asked people to abandon their faith traditions. Instead, he urged them to deepen their walk with Christ, no matter their background. His readings were for farmers and doctors, mothers and ministers, skeptics and believers. And in every case, his message was the same. Turn to God, live in love, serve others, and the truth will reveal itself. His gift was not to create a new religion, but to remind us of the eternal one written in our hearts. That is why his legacy continues to speak, because it resonates not as doctrine, but as living truth that every soul can recognize. What about the fears that weigh so heavily on many hearts? The fear of failure, the fear of judgment, the fear of death itself. Cayce taught that these fears dissolve in the presence of faith. He said that fear is simply faith turned upside down, faith in the power of darkness instead of the power of God. To overcome fear, you must shift your focus, place your trust not in yourself, but in the divine. He urged people to remember that Christ is always near, that prayer calls light into the darkest corners, and that no soul is ever abandoned. If you live in fear today, let this be your reminder. You were not created for despair. You were created for life, for love, for God's presence. If you have followed this far, you know that Cayce's words are not mere ideas, but calls to action. They are not meant to be admired, but to be lived. And living them begins now, in the small choices of your day. Will you forgive instead of resent? Will you pray instead of worry? Will you love instead of hate? These choices may seem small, but they create eternity. The moment you turn your heart toward God, the kingdom of heaven begins within you, and once you taste that, nothing in this world can compare. Cayce reminded again and again that the greatest evidence of a soul awakened is service. Not visions, not knowledge, not mystical experiences, but love in action. He said that when you help someone in need, when you speak words of comfort, when you choose forgiveness, you are living the Christ life. Service, he explained, is the highest form of prayer because it puts love into motion. In this way, every person, no matter their station, has the power to reveal God. You do not need wealth, education, or recognition. You need only the willingness to love. That is what transforms the world, one soul at a time. He also spoke about the importance of consistency. Many want spiritual growth as a sudden burst of light, a dramatic revelation. But Cayce said it is built day by day, through steady choices, through prayer when you don't feel like praying, through kindness when it is easier to stay silent, through forgiveness when anger feels justified. He urged people to practice faith as they practice any skill, with patience, with repetition, with humility. Over time, the soul becomes attuned, just as a musician's ear becomes trained, just as a farmer learns the rhythms of the seasons. In this way, faith becomes not an idea, but a way of being. Cayce believed that one of the greatest tragedies of life is to waste it on things that do not last. He pleaded with people to live with eternity in mind, to see beyond the temporary struggles and pleasures of this world, and to invest in what cannot fade. He asked, "What are you building that will endure beyond death? Is it bitterness which crumbles like dust, or is it compassion which shines forever?" Each soul must answer, and the moment of answering is always now. He insisted that procrastination is the enemy of the spirit. To delay faith, to postpone forgiveness, to put off prayer is to rob the soul of its present chance. Tomorrow is never guaranteed, but today, right now, the door stands open. This message, he said, is the same one Christ gave to all who would listen. The kingdom of God is within you. Not far away, not locked in the future, but here, waiting to be lived. It is a choice, a surrender, a turning of the heart toward God. If you feel the stirring in your spirit as you hear these words, do not resist it. It is God's invitation. It is Christ calling you home. This is the moment that can shape not only your future, but your eternity. Before we close, I want to invite you one last time. If this message has touched your heart, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your reflection in the comments. Your participation is more than support. It is a witness that faith still lives, that truth still calls, that love still transforms. Together, we can spread this light to those who are searching, to those who are hurting, and to those who may be ready to hear this message for the first time. Edgar Cayce's legacy is not in the thousands of readings he gave, nor in the books written about him, but in the lives that were changed by turning back to God. His voice was always clear: seek Christ, live love, serve others, and you will find the truth your soul longs for. That truth is not hidden, it is waiting within you. The only question is whether you will answer. So as we end this journey, remember, you did not arrive here by accident. You found this message because your soul was ready. The time is now. The invitation is yours. Choose life, choose faith, choose God. Throughout thousands of documented readings, given between 1901 and 1945, Edgar Cayce revealed something that would fundamentally challenge how we understand human existence. When people came to him seeking answers about their health, their relationships, their inexplicable fears and talents, Cayce consistently pointed to something deeper, a soul purpose that transcends a single lifetime. Before we explore this profound teaching, if you're drawn to understanding the hidden patterns of your own existence, hit that like button and drop a comment sharing what unexplained talents or fears you've experienced in your own life. I read every single comment and I'll mark them with a heart, because this community is built on seekers like you. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss these insights from the Cayce readings. The concept Cayce presented wasn't simple reincarnation, as many understood it. According to the readings preserved at the Association for Research and Enlightenment in Virginia Beach, your soul doesn't randomly move from life to life. Each incarnation represents a carefully chosen classroom where specific lessons await. But here's what makes Cayce's teaching revolutionary. Your soul has an overarching purpose that connects all these lifetimes together. Think of it like a master craftsman learning their trade. You don't become a master sculptor in a single afternoon. One day you learn to feel the stone. Another day you understand the tools. Years later, you grasp proportion and form. Cayce suggested that souls work the same way, except our classroom spans centuries, and our curriculum involves the fundamental qualities of consciousness itself. In his readings, Cayce identified what he called soul patterns. These weren't past lives in isolation, but interconnected experiences designed to develop specific spiritual qualities. One person might be working on patience across multiple incarnations. Another soul might be learning the balance between leadership and humility. Someone else could be mastering the art of forgiveness through varied relationships across time. What's fascinating is that Cayce didn't describe this as punishment or reward. The readings presented reincarnation as an educational system of the soul's own choosing. Before birth, according to these teachings, the soul reviews what it needs to learn and selects circumstances that will provide those exact lessons. That difficult relationship, that inexplicable talent, that fear you can't trace to any childhood experience, all potential echoes of your soul's curriculum. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Cayce explained that we carry forward not just lessons, but abilities. A soul who developed healing skills in one lifetime might be born with intuitive medical knowledge in another. Someone who mastered music centuries ago might be a prodigy in their current incarnation. These aren't accidents of genetics, according to the readings, but soul memories expressing themselves. The readings also address something most people wonder about. Why don't we remember our past lives? Cayce explained that conscious memory would actually interfere with the lessons we came to learn. Imagine trying to learn patience if you remembered being a king with absolute power. The veil of forgetfulness, as he called it, gives us the fresh perspective we need to genuinely grow. However, the soul remembers even when the conscious mind doesn't. This is why certain people, places, or time periods can trigger inexplicable emotions. You walk into a medieval cathedral and feel overwhelming peace, even though you've never been there before. You meet someone for the first time, but feel you've known them forever. You have an unreasonable fear of water despite no traumatic experience in this life. Cayce suggested these are soul memories breaking through. During the readings given in the 1930s and 1940s, Cayce outlined how to discover your soul's purpose in this lifetime. He emphasized that your deepest, most persistent interests often point to your soul's work. That subject you can't stop reading about, that cause that moves you to tears, that skill you picked up with unusual ease. These are breadcrumbs your soul left for you to follow. But understanding past lives wasn't meant to be about ego or entertainment. In reading after reading, Cayce warned against using this knowledge for pride or blame. The point wasn't to discover you were Cleopatra or Napoleon. The point was to understand the patterns you're working with so you can make better choices now. One of the most powerful concepts in the Cayce readings is that of soul groups. According to these teachings, we don't reincarnate alone. Groups of souls come back together repeatedly, taking turns playing different roles in each other's evolution. The person who was your child in one life might be your parent in another. Your greatest enemy in a past incarnation could be your closest friend now. This explains those instant connections or unexplainable conflicts with certain people. Cayce also addressed karma, but not in the punitive way many understand it. The readings described karma as simply the law of cause and effect extended across lifetimes. If you created pain, you'd experience pain, not as punishment, but as education. If you gave generously, that generosity would return. Not as reward, but as the natural flowering of what you planted. Every action, thought, and intention creates ripples that eventually return to teach us their effects. What makes the Cayce material unique is its emphasis on grace and choice. Yes, you carry patterns from the past. Yes, you have lessons to learn. But in every moment you have free will. The past influences, but doesn't imprison. A soul pattern of anger can be transformed into passionate advocacy. A pattern of fear can become cautious wisdom. The readings consistently emphasized that understanding the past gives you power in the present, not chains. The practical application of these teachings centers on what Cayce called soul development. He suggested that your true purpose isn't about career or achievement in the worldly sense. Your soul's purpose is about developing love, compassion, patience, wisdom, forgiveness, and service. Everything else is just the stage where you practice these qualities. In hundreds of life readings, Cayce would identify specific soul purposes for individuals. But almost universally, these purposes involved becoming more loving, more conscious, more of service to others. A person might have been a healer in multiple incarnations because their soul was mastering compassion through action. Another might have been a teacher across many lives, learning to share wisdom without imposing will. The readings also revealed something profound about Earth itself. According to Cayce, our planet is a specific type of school in the cosmic curriculum. Some souls are relatively new to Earth, while others have been incarnating here for thousands of years. Each soul comes to Earth for specific reasons that match what this realm can teach. What's particularly relevant for modern seekers is Cayce's teaching about this current lifetime. He indicated that many souls chose to incarnate during this particular era because of the unprecedented opportunities for growth. Times of rapid change, he suggested, offer accelerated learning. The challenges we face globally aren't punishments, but classrooms for collective soul evolution. Understanding your soul's purpose, according to Cayce, doesn't require entering trance or accessing mystical states. The readings suggested that you can discover your purpose by examining three things: your natural talents, your deepest passions, and the recurring challenges in your life. Where these three intersect, you'll find your soul's curriculum for this incarnation. Your natural talents point to abilities you've developed across lifetimes. That ease with languages, that intuitive understanding of animals, that capacity to comfort the grieving. These are soul skills you've refined before. Your deepest passions indicate what your soul came to explore in this life. And your recurring challenges? Those are precisely the lessons you enrolled to master. Cayce also emphasized that your soul's purpose evolves within a lifetime. The person who spends their 20s learning discipline might spend their 40s teaching it. Someone who masters fear in their youth might help others face their fears in later years. Your purpose isn't static. It unfolds in stages as you're ready for each level. One of the most comforting aspects of the Cayce philosophy is the teaching that there are no wasted experiences. That job you hated, that relationship that failed, that dream that died, all of these served your soul's education. The readings consistently reminded people that from the soul's perspective there are no mistakes, only lessons. Some lessons are more painful than others, but all contribute to your evolution. The readings also addressed a question many people ask: how many lifetimes do we have? Cayce suggested that the number varies by soul, but that reincarnation continues until the soul achieves what he called Christ consciousness, a state of perfect love, wisdom, and unity with the divine. This might take dozens of lifetimes or hundreds, depending on the soul's choices and growth rate. But here's something crucial that Cayce emphasized repeatedly. Don't get so focused on past lives that you miss this one. The past informs and explains, but this present moment is where you have power. This lifetime right now is your opportunity to make the choices that will shape your soul's future. Understanding the past is valuable only if it helps you live more consciously now. According to the readings, signs of your soul's purpose appear throughout your life. Recurring dreams about specific time periods or places might indicate past life connections. Unusual fears or phobias with no obvious cause in this lifetime could point to past traumas your soul is ready to heal. Strong immediate reactions to certain people might reveal soul group connections. And those persistent interests that won't let you go, those are often your soul calling you toward your purpose. Cayce taught that meditation is the most reliable tool for accessing your soul's wisdom. In the stillness, when the chatter of daily life quiets, the soul can communicate. You might receive insights, feelings, or knowing that guides you toward your purpose. He suggested that everyone has this capacity. It just requires practice and patience. The practical implications of understanding soul purpose are profound. Suddenly, your difficulties make sense as chosen challenges. Your talents become recognized as hard-won abilities. Your relationships reveal themselves as sacred contracts between souls helping each other evolve. And your life, with all its messiness and beauty, becomes a meaningful chapter in an eternal story. Cayce's teachings on soul purpose also address the question of suffering. Why do bad things happen to good people? From the soul's perspective, according to the readings, situations aren't good or bad, but educational. A soul might choose a difficult life, specifically to develop qualities like courage, compassion, or perseverance. This doesn't mean we should be passive in the face of injustice, but it does suggest that every soul's journey has deeper purpose than appearances suggest. The readings also discussed what happens between lifetimes. According to Cayce, souls spend time in other dimensions or planes of existence, reviewing their most recent life and preparing for the next. This intermission period is when the soul, with the help of guides and teachers, decides what lessons to tackle next and what circumstances would best serve that learning. One of the most beautiful aspects of the Cayce material is its message of hope. No matter what you've done, no matter what patterns you carry, every moment offers an opportunity for transformation. The readings emphasize that spiritual growth isn't about perfection, but direction. Are you moving toward love or away from it? Toward service or selfishness? Toward consciousness or unconsciousness? The direction matters more than the speed. For those wondering how to apply these teachings practically, Cayce offered clear guidance. First, study yourself. Pay attention to what moves you, what challenges you, what comes easily. Second, serve others. Your soul's purpose always involves contributing to the growth and well-being of other souls. Third, meditate regularly to maintain connection with your deeper wisdom. And fourth, practice forgiveness of yourself and others, because holding on to resentment blocks soul growth. The readings also addressed soulmates and twin flames. Cayce suggested that we have multiple soulmates, those souls we've traveled with across many lifetimes, learning and growing together. These aren't always romantic relationships. A soulmate might be your best friend, your child, or even that teacher who changed your life. The connection is recognized by a sense of deep familiarity and mutual growth. Understanding that we're eternal souls on an evolutionary journey transforms how we view death. According to Cayce, death is simply a transition, a doorway between classrooms. The soul doesn't end. It continues learning, growing, and eventually choosing its next incarnation. This perspective can bring profound comfort to those grieving or facing their own mortality. As we approach the conclusion of this exploration, it's worth noting that Cayce himself struggled with these revelations. Raised in a traditional Christian household, the concept of reincarnation challenged his early religious training. But as the readings consistently presented this information over decades, and as he witnessed the transformation in people who understood their soul's journey, he came to accept it as truth. The legacy of these teachings continues at the Association for Research and Enlightenment, where thousands of Cayce's readings are preserved and studied. Researchers, seekers, and scholars continue to explore the implications of his work, finding that his insights about soul purpose resonate with people across cultures and belief systems. So what is your soul's true purpose? According to Edgar Cayce, it's encoded in your life right now. It's in the talents you possess, the passions that won't let you go, the people you're drawn to, and the challenges you face. Your purpose isn't something you need to find outside yourself. It's already expressing through you, waiting for you to recognize it and align with it consciously. The invitation isn't to become someone else or to achieve some distant spiritual state. The invitation is to become more fully who you already are at the soul level, to develop the qualities of love, wisdom, patience, and service that your soul came here to cultivate, to recognize that every experience, pleasant or painful, serves your evolution, and to live with the awareness that you're an eternal being having a temporary human experience for very specific reasons. The practical wisdom Cayce offered about discovering soul purpose extends into daily life in surprising ways. He emphasized that your current relationships are never random. The people who challenge you most might be your greatest teachers. That difficult co-worker who triggers your impatience. Your soul might have chosen this interaction to master tolerance. The family member whose suffering moves you to help. This could be a continuation of a healer's path you've walked before. Cayce also spoke about vocations and soul purpose, but not in the way many expect. According to the readings, your job title matters less than how you show up in that role. A nurse expressing compassion fulfills soul purpose just as much as a spiritual teacher. A parent raising children with consciousness serves their soul's mission as profoundly as a monk in meditation. It's not what you do, but who you're becoming through what you do that matters. The readings addressed children and soul purpose in ways that were revolutionary for the early 20th century. Cayce suggested that children come in with their own soul agendas, and wise parents recognize this. That child who seems wise beyond their years might be an old soul with many incarnations of experience. The one who struggles with certain lessons might be tackling those challenges for the first time. Understanding this can transform parenting from control to facilitation of each soul's unique journey. One aspect of Cayce's teaching that deserves emphasis is the concept of grace in soul evolution. While karma and patterns exist, the readings consistently pointed to the power of love and forgiveness to transform even the most difficult soul patterns. A cycle of anger spanning lifetimes can be broken in a single moment of genuine forgiveness. A pattern of fear can dissolve through one courageous choice made with awareness. Your past influences you, but love has the power to rewrite your future. The readings also explored how historical periods attract certain types of souls. Times of great change, like the era we're living in now, call forth souls ready for accelerated growth. Periods of stability might attract souls needing to master patience and routine. Wars and conflicts bring together souls working on lessons of power, sacrifice, and the consequences of violence. The world stage becomes a classroom where millions of souls simultaneously work on their individual and collective evolution. Cayce's teachings on soul purpose also included guidance about recognizing when you're aligned with your path versus when you've strayed. Signs of alignment include a sense of rightness, despite challenges, synchronicities that support your direction, and a feeling that your efforts matter even when results aren't immediate. Signs of misalignment include persistent exhaustion that rest doesn't cure, a gnawing sense of wrongness, and repeated obstacles that feel like the universe is saying no. The concept of soul age appeared throughout the readings. Cayce suggested that some souls are relatively young in their Earth experience, while others are ancient travelers who've incarnated hundreds of times. Young souls might focus on material lessons and personal power. Mature souls often turn toward questions of meaning and service. Old souls frequently feel a sense of homesickness for the spiritual realms and a desire to complete their earth lessons. None is better than another. Each represents a different stage in the eternal journey. What's particularly relevant today is Cayce's teaching about collective soul purpose. He indicated that humanity as a whole is evolving toward higher consciousness. Individual soul purposes aren't separate from this collective evolution, but contribute to it. Every person who chooses love over fear, consciousness over unconsciousness, service over selfishness, advances not just their own soul, but humanity's collective spiritual growth. The readings emphasize that discovering your soul's purpose isn't meant to be a burden, but a liberation. When you understand why certain things come easily and others challenge you, when you recognize the patterns